All right, everyone. Welcome to another Monday Night Live show. My guest tonight is Avery Bishop. A new book out called The Chateau, an Audible original. We're going to get into that here in just a minute. But before we get started, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and leave a review. Also, visit 𝐿𝐿𝐼𝐿.com and check me out on Substack. I'm doing some really cool stuff on Substack now. But for right now, let's bring in Avery Bishop. Avery,
Hey,
how you doing,
Jeff.
man? How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, big deal because the Chateau and Audible original just came out. I was listening to it today. I think I got about an hour and a half in at work before I got interrupted. Um,
Okay.
Very good, very intriguing. How does it feel having the audiobook out in the wild?
So this is my second Audible original. The first one I did was a few years ago called Dear Seraphina, which was a novella. It was about an hour and a half in terms
Okay.
of audiobook length. And it's weird because you have this book that's out, but it's not like when you have an ebook, a paperback out, and you have the possibility of going to a bookstore or doing a signing or doing events. I have some giveaway tchotchkes type things that I can give people at events, but I don't really have like a book to send people.
Right.
Um, and I have some bookstagrammers who would like to listen and review, but they don't have Audible accounts because if you have an Audible account, you can download for free. But my publisher provide a small number of promo codes. I'm trying to get more promo codes for these people who would like to listen to it. So yeah, it's not like where you can just send copies or it's easily on like NetGalley where people can download it. So it's out in the world, but at the same time, it doesn't really feel like it's
Yeah.
out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because the physical, when you think of a book, you think of a physical copy. You don't think of necessarily an audiobook. But audiobooks have been on the rise. It seems to be very, very popular now and continuously growing. How do you get started with an audiobook? Like in your case, you wrote the book, but it came out as an audiobook. Like, is the process different, or how does it work?
So specifically, let's kind of jump back. So my very first Avery Bishop novel came out in 2000. What is it? 2020. It was Girl Gone Mad, and part of the contract, it had been a 2-book contract, and my agent had like added some language into the contract that in between books I could also do um, like a novella or like some type of thing because she knew like I was pretty prolific, and she also knew that Audible at the time was really snapping up a lot of these. They want to do a lot of exclusive content.
Yeah.
So from that, I had the push to what became Dear Seraphina, and in that instance, I wrote the entire manuscript, and we submitted it. Fortunately, Audible liked it, and they went through and they recorded it. It was out. People really seemed to dug it. I think maybe like a year later, because I held the other rights, so I put out an ebook and paperback. Um, in this instance, because I already kind of had a little bit of a relationship with Audible, they were really eager to try to do something again. So it was just trying to find the right thing because we had sent them a book at one point and they weren't really digging that. So, and I know we're going to talk about Chateau. So just to really kind of go into it, it's the setup is about this couple who recently got married and they're going away on their mini moon. Now, Jeff, you and I, we know each other a little bit. I don't know, we don't know ourselves that well, but like I know you're married. Do you like right here without thinking about it? Can you say how many years you've been married? Because I honestly could not.
20.
It's oh
20.
wow, okay,
But
yeah,
just because it's
we're coming
20.
up on that. Okay, yeah, we're coming up that. But if it wasn't an even number, you might be like, ugh.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the time, like, had you ever heard of the term mini moon before?
Many no.
Yeah. So, but the concept is something that's been around forever. It is essentially the idea that a couple who recently gets married, they're not going to immediately go maybe on like a far flung honeymoon because maybe they don't have the time, they don't have the resources, the extra cash, but they still want to go away for like the weekend or for like a night or two, with the idea that they'll go on a honeymoon somewhere down the line. And so the same thing happened when my wife and I got married, where we just were not ready to kind of like go far away right away. And I guess as a term, it's been more popularized in like the last decade, maybe. And so what
Okay.
happened was my agent was getting married, and I think we were having a phone call, and she was talking about her availability because when you have an agent and you're dealing with publishers or whatever else, your agent really wants them to have what their availability is coming up in case you need to get a hold of them, and if they're not available, who at the agency you can talk to, blah blah blah. And she just kind of like threw in there like, yeah, after our wedding we'll be going on a mini moon, and then later in the blah 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 we'll be going on a honeymoon probably later and I was like, what's a mini moon?
Right, exactly.
And she told me, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I actually dug it up. I'm on a different computer right here, so I don't have it easily handy. But I had kind of pulled up the email from, I think it was at this point, was it maybe 3 years ago? No, 3 years ago, where I put it in email. I think she had returned. She got married. She returned, and I said, hey, happy to hear your mini moon went well. And then like in parentheses, I put like, the thriller writer in me really kind of feels like, I want to write about a couple that goes on a mini moon and something bad happens because as thriller crime writers, we have that like demented part of our heads that is constantly taking these things in real life and kind of, coming up with the worst case scenario. Yes, like, exactly. How could we make this into? So it initially started as a joke and basically just kind of bubbled up from there when my agent come back to me and said Audible really is, still interested in doing something. And she's like, didn't you have this idea about like the mini moon? And I said, yeah, okay. So I came up with a few different ideas, pitched a few different ideas, what would be good. And initially this was supposed to be a novella because we had done a novella previously. It was going to be a longer novella, maybe like 3 hours, maybe 4 hours. And I have found that the correlation between hours and word count is usually about 10,000 words.
Okay.
Now, it's not exact because depending on the narrator, some narrators might have a quicker pace than others. Some might have a slower pace than others. But yeah, ballpark, I would say about every hour is about 10,000 words. So we're looking at like 40,000 word novella. And I had to write like a few sample chapters, do like an outline, which I hate doing, and we're going to get to that. Because once we sold it, it was like, okay, great. And then I sat down and I started writing it, and I realized, shoot, the only way to really make this work, to make it effective, is I'm going to have to bring in another point of view. Because it's about this murder investigation, and one of the main characters, Nina, she's just this newlywed, who just is part of the investigation. She's like a witness. And so there's zero reason for her to be privy to any of the actual homicide investigations, what's going on in the background. And so I brought in one of the detectives. We have like, part 2 is really kind of focusing on from that point of view. I think a little over 60,000 words because the audiobook right now is 7.5 hours. And I think it's much better for it. I'm happy I did it. Fortunately, my editors, because I had reached out and I said, how long is too long? Because I'm realizing that I might have to go over what I initially thought. And I think she said something like, well, we don't really want anything over 80,000 words. And I said, okay, good. I don't think it's going to be that long. But at least I was worried they're going to be like, well, we don't want, more than like 40,000 words or something like that. So, so that's kind of how that book came along. And just a real quick. So because this book really was inspired because of my agent, and audiobooks typically, like Audible originals, at least like Dear Seraphina, I didn't have a dedication. And sometimes I listen to some of these Audible originals and there's not dedication, but it's a novel. So I figured, there's no reason not to dedicate it, but I wanted to be a surprise because I wanted to dedicate it to my agent. Because really, if it wasn't for her, and so usually when I'm emailing my editors, like my agent's CC'd on these emails just to make sure she's in the loop, depending if anything is, more business related comes up. So I had emailed my editor at Audible on the DL, and I was like, hey, I'd like to really include my agent here, but I want to make sure we do it in a way to surprise her. And she's like, yeah, that's fine. And so we had put it on the manuscript, and that was like the very last thing. Like once we had done copy editing, once I kind of did my usual last read through, because I always catch things on like a final read through, because I'm like OCD about just going through the manuscript to make sure, which still doesn't really matter because Audible gave me the opportunity to listen to the full audiobook. And I don't know about you, but like I hate listening or reading things that have already been, published because like I will hear like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have used that word, or maybe I should have ended this chapter just another line.
Yes.
Stuff that I think a normal reader or listener would not even notice or care about.
I read
but of course,
stuff
in
out
my
loud.
head, I'm like, yeah.
I read
But of course, in my head, I'm just like, it's.
Yeah. It drives me nuts.
But so what happened was, we put the dedication in and, submitted it. It got recorded. And which, by the way, I don't know if we're going to talk about it, but the narrator, 𝐼𝐶∞ as a huge audiobook fan, I know how important an audiobook narrator is. Yes. It was very important to me that we get a really good, strong audiobook narrator, and 𝐼𝐶∞. In fact, a lot of the listener reviews I've seen recently have just been, singing her praises. So we really
awesome.
lucked out with her.
She's awesome. An hour and a half in, and I was like, oh, you couldn't have picked a better person.
So when we had sent out, like, usually I have like a list of like wish list narrators depending on the project, and she was on there. A few other narrators that I really liked, and when the auditions came in, and typically it was really weird. They included like I think a page or two of like later in the book, so it wasn't like chapter 1. It was more of, I guess, a dynamic scene to make sure that this narrator would be able to handle like different characters and different things going on, and she just immediately stuck out. It really came down, and I even told her because I talked to her recently, like it came down between her and another narrator. And it was just, I told my editor, I was like, my gut is saying we should go, Christine's the right one for this project. Because sometimes it's just, And I know the crazy thing is sometimes I feel like certain authors just don't even like, they don't listen to audiobooks, which, okay, fine. But then like, they just don't care. They're like, whoever wants to narrate it, which, again, it is essentially like having a movie and not caring who is starring as your leading role. Yeah. It's just like, just let whoever does it. It's like, no, this person is going to make or break your project. Like if they're not the right person, it just, I feel like a good narrator can make a good book great. Oh yeah. Can make a great book exceptional. And then Absolutely. A bad narrator can make a good book subpar. And I hate to say it, but that's the case. I mean, there have been times where I'll listen. I will literally avoid certain audiobooks because there's a narrator attached that I'm just not a fan of. That I just am like, I'm not going to be able to listen to this.
I've gotten to know a couple of audiobook narrators that I'm like, I don't care for their style. It's nothing against the book or anything like that. It's just, I just didn't. I'm really picky too when it comes to audiobooks because I don't have the time, so I really want to be into it. So there's a couple that I don't really like either, but you're right. I mean, the narrator makes it, can really tell the story or really can destroy it. So I think you do have to choose wisely.
Yeah. And then just put a button on that story. They record, the audiobook narrator records the audiobook. And I had asked my editor, I said, is there a possible, like, can I get like the first like minute in the audio? Because I wanted to share it with my agent, because it's not like a regular book where I can then just send her a copy and have it there on that page. And so she eventually got me like an MP3 file, and I emailed my agent and I said, "Oh man, I think we made a mistake going with Christine on this book." I said her audition was great, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't sound right. Can you listen to this and let me know what you think? And like, I want to say like 10, not even 20 minutes later, she responds to me. She's like, "Oh my God, Robert, I can't believe it." Like, because it included her dedication, you know what I mean? And, nice. And she was like, "And I'm assuming you're not serious about her because she sounds great." I'm like, yeah, she does sound great. So just a trick to get you to listen. But anyway, that's cool. That's really cool. Because again, I was like, well, how can you get somebody to listen to it without being, and that's another thing. So Christine had actually emailed, and she copied, like, my editor, my agent, a lot of other people on the production at Audible, certain words just to get clarification on how I would want them pronounced. And one of them was my agent's last name. Her name is 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭. And I was like, oh, shoot. Did she notice that? But I think, with all, she gets a lot of emails. So I think she didn't really like read into it too much. So fortunately it was still a surprise, or if she did see it, at least she acted surprised in the email she sent me.
Do you have acknowledgments at the end?
No, that's something that eventually, when there's going to be an ebook paperback, usually when I work on a project, I kind of keep a separate, like on my iMac, I'll kind of keep like like a little, like on the side, I usually have like notes set
Yeah.
up for like different things, like if I have upcoming calls, things to talk about with my agent or editor. And then like, certain like links I might come across, like, I like every day I'm getting like the Wired daily email with a bunch of like articles and stuff that just always like sticks out. And you're like, this is interesting. Maybe I can use this. I'll just like save like these links and these things. But usually I'll like, when I'm working on a project, I'll try to like make sure I have who is helping and, for acknowledgement purposes. So
Yeah.
later down the line, I'm not just trying to, rack my brain trying to think like, because of course you want to try to include everybody you can.
Oh yeah.
Although usually it's impossible because there's just a lot of people behind the scenes that you probably never even meet or deal with that also are involved in the
Yeah.
production process.
So, what is it like? So you turn it in, they record the audiobook, and now it's out. So, is there a chance that it'll be in physical form or in an ebook later on?
Yeah, so Audible is like, think about like Netflix and Apple and Prime. They like to have their own exclusive content. So Audible is the same way, where they want to have their own. They do Audible originals in terms of like novellas, novels. They do audio dramas. I think they even do like podcasts. So part of the contract, just like it was with the previous one I did, Dear Seraphina, there's a holdback period. So they have that audio right to have it exclusive for a certain amount of time.
Oh, okay.
And yes, eventually there will be an audiobook and a paperback. Um, I would like to think within a year. I know I have to look at the contract to see the exact wording, but at least, but probably it's like sometime next year there will be an actual physical paperback at the very least, at an ebook.
Okay, that's cool because I love the cover. It's so good.
I'll have to send you. The designers came up with a lot of different ones, and some were decent, but yeah, that was one that really stuck out.
Yeah.
And actually, it was between my editor and my editor really kind of liked a different type of thing, but the other one that she really liked, we felt was just very busy. Where I felt this one was just very more simplistic.
It
It felt
is.
more like a quote unquote big book because it has just that image with a big
Yeah.
font
The color kind of
and so,
pops.
especially when you're thinking about like audiobook, it's just going to be like the square on people's phone or tablet
Hmm.
more than likely. So you want to make sure it's something that can easily be seen. And yeah, oh yeah, yeah, it's a great. In fact, I might try to see if I can reach out to those designers to use that same design or whatever for the eventual. If I self-publish, I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens because with Dear Seraphina, it was novella, so it was no use trying to get a publisher to send it out. Like I could just do that myself easily because it's mostly just going to be an ebook and a print on demand paperback. But an actual novel, I don't know. We'll see if there's any publishers who are out there who would be interested in putting that out.
So for this book, you went back to the pen name of Avery Bishop. Let's talk about pen names for maybe people who are listening who are not really kind of knowledgeable about pen names. For first of all, what is a pen name in the literary world?
So it's just like a pseudonym. A pen name is I mean, the concept has been around forever. You look at Stephen King. He wrote some books under Richard Bachman. Dean Koontz wrote a ton of books under different pen names. Michael Crichton, he wrote, I think, John Lang, a
Yep.
lot of books under. So really, it really comes down to, for one reason or another. In fact, I mean, if we want to go back hundreds of years, a lot of female authors were writing under pen names because at the time, you know, I guess just for whatever reason, publishing or the mass readership out there, did not look kindly on, I guess, females writing books in a certain genre or whatever else. So, another reason I say that is because in the past several years, a lot of psychological suspense male writers have started utilizing pen names for these types of books in the psychological suspense space. So you got like Riley Sager, that's actually his second pen name. This is nothing, this isn't a state secret because it's out there. And in fact, I think if you look on YouTube, I did a live stream with him last year. where we really talked about just his whole writing career up to the Riley Sager point. But he wrote 3 novels under his real name, Todd Ritter. They were like these mysteries, and they just didn't sell. And then he ended up doing this like historical fantasy thriller type thing under a pen name. And even before that book came out, he told me that he had written a follow-up book, the second book, like in a series, and gave it to the publisher. And the publisher was like, "Yeah, we're just gonna publish the one book." And so, of course, that's just devastating.
Yeah.
And then I think he said he was at a point where he just was like, "All right, I was going to kind of like throw in the towel." But then he came up with the idea for Final Girls, pitched it to his agent. His agent loved it. He wrote it really quick. They went out with it, and now I think he just had his 9th book come out. He's one of the biggest thriller writers in the world. But he had said that he was so proud of Final Girls that he wanted to publish it under his real name. And his agent had to give him a reality check and say, "Listen, if you want to do that, that's fine. But any publisher who's interested, they're going to look at your sales records under your real name, under the 3 mysteries you did. So even if they accept it, they're going to give you a really bad advance, and then they're probably going to give you a really crappy cover, and there's going to be no marketing." And finally, he was like, "Okay, fine." So when they went out with it, they went out under the pen name Riley Sager, and again, he was just I think like it was just a huge hit. I think his second book was a New York Times bestseller, and every single book since then have been New York Times bestsellers. Wow. But then there's other books. There's Alex Finley is a pen name. Jamie Day, it just recently came out because I had known this, but I knew that he was kind of keeping it on the hush. But Daniel Palmer, who for a while then had published as J.D. Palmer, and then he came out with Jamie Day. I think the 3rd book just recently came out, but that's Dan. So sometimes pen names are utilized for different genres. Sometimes pen names are utilized just because sales will just follow a writer's career like a bad ghost, and it will just sink them. And oftentimes publishers, sometimes it looks like they're just always looking for reasons to say no. And so if they can say, "You know what, really like the book, but unfortunately, based on these sales, we really can't make an offer." Even if this book might be completely different, or this book could be a breakout book. I mean, look at, and then you have other authors like Adrian McKinty, who for the longest time, I mean, he had, published a lot of different novels. He basically, I think, was at a place where he was done writing. He ended up writing The Chain. And then, that became this massive success. And then he was able to revitalize his career, and he didn't have to go under a different pen name. Although I can pretty much guarantee that was probably a conversation that was discussed, because, and then so for me at the time, this was just years and years and years ago. I was at Writer's Digest conference. They had in New York City. They had invited me up to just be on a panel, and it was really, in retrospect, it was insane. They paid my travel, my hotel, just to be on a panel for an hour. And I was like, "Okay, sure." Yeah. I was like, "Yeah." I was going to say, I was like, "Yeah, it's a free trip to New York." So while I was up there, I had met with a friend of mine who works marketing at Random House, and we went out, I think, to like late that night. We went out to we met at a bar and got something to eat and drink, and we were just talking, and inevitably you talk about just like publishing and books. And I think I had said, just jokingly, because again at the time this was, and I think still is the case, just the idea of books with the title, or with girl in the title, is kind of like, it was much more of a trend back then with Gone Girl, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Girl on the Train. And I just said jokingly, I was like, one day I feel like I should write a book with a girl in the title. To which he looked at me and said, "You should." Kind of all serious. And so I was like, all right, this guy, he works in publishing. He kind of knows what's, what the trends are. And I said, okay. So I just kind of kept that in the back of my head. And I had come up with this title, Girl Gone Mad, which hadn't been used. It's, the idea of gone mad, someone's gone mad, girl gone mad. And having self-published, I worked with a lot of really great designers. This one designer I used had some pre-made. So they were covers that I guess they had made for clients, and for whatever reason they weren't used, but they didn't want to like just scrap them. So they had them up where, for I think it was like 100, 150, $200 or something like that, you could utilize these pre-made covers. And I had to find it because I knew we would probably talk about this. I found this cover that I really liked, and I felt would fit. And I don't know if my ring light is going to let it see here, but oops. Is it coming through?
Yeah.
You can see there it says "Girl Gone Mad." It has my name, Robert Sword, my actual name on there.
Yep.
And because I thought it was a very like Megan Abbott-esque type cover, very a little ominous, kind of maybe, but more. But the thing is that going back to the image, it's more like it's not because in my head I wanted to write more of an adult thriller, and this looked more like a
A little younger. Yeah.
a teenager, younger, and I'm like, well, I don't want to really do that. And so, and this whole thing was just so like ass backwards how the construction came about. And so, just kind of thinking of the idea. And at the time, I'd been working in mental health. I was working as a mental health case manager with kids, so a lot of like middle schoolers, elementary. Well, I guess not too much elementary, but high school and middle school. And so part of that just kind of inspired the idea where Girl Gone Mad essentially was the idea of this new girl who comes to this school. She gets befriended by basically the popular girls who just bully her relentlessly and manipulate her to the point where she ends up trying to take her own life. And then she leaves school. No one hears from her ever again. 20 years later, all these girls who had been the mean girls, popular girls, they all go their separate ways. And then the main character, who basically really, really feels guilty over what's ever happened, she becomes a therapist herself. She gets word that one of her friends died, committed suicide. And then the more they start looking into it, they start finding another friend who had also died by suicide. And they start thinking like, well, is this girl back for revenge? What's going on? It was a really, really high concept idea. And initially, again, I was going to put it under my own name. And then I realized at some point, I just realized it'd probably be better to utilize a pen name for this. And so at the time, honestly, I thought I was going to be doing some type of initials because like AJ Finn or something along those lines, JP Delaney. Again, both male.
So you were thinking of a new one.
So at the time, I immediately, like Avery Bishop wasn't even in the conversation. It was going to be just initial. It was probably going to be some type of initial thing. But then actually it was Riley Seger, I even told him to, the first time I met him, I said, if it wasn't for you, I would have ended up probably doing some type of like initials for this pen name. But I thought with you, I was like, okay, like a gender neutral name, something that's kind of unique, something that really sticks out. Avery's not really a name, can be used for male, female. But it's also not like a very common name. So it's something that sticks out. And initially when like, right before we submitted it, it was going to be Avery Dunn, Dunn. And for whatever reason, in my back of my head, I'm thinking like, I'm just not feeling that. And then we use Bishop instead, and it has a much, I think, stronger feel to it. But that's really where the pen game comes from. It was mostly just like for these certain types of books. In fact, quite honestly, in the back of my head, I have another book in mind that I probably, if I do one day, I would probably utilize a pen name. Just again, it's more of just the type of genre to set it a little bit apart. And it was, I don't know, it's been very interesting because I've written other novels from a female point of view. Like one of my very early novels, The Serial Killer's Wife, was from a female point of view. I've written a female assassin series from a female point of view, but those were also much more crime action thrillers. Again, these are more psychological suspense, which honestly, that was something I had to learn because even though I had read some psychological suspense here and there, I still have that crime thriller sensibility. So honestly, the very first draft of Girl Gone Mad, well, not the first draft, but like the draft I then, because at that time I had left my agent a couple of years prior. And so I didn't have an agent at the time. And I was like, well, I really, I thought about self-publishing. I was like, maybe there's something here. So I was like, well, maybe I can try to, I should try to find a new agent. And, that draft had the third act was just very bloody over the top. Like it was much more a Robert Swartwood novel than a Avery Bishop novel, because again, and then what I had been taught essentially was suspense is that threat of danger, whereas opposed to more crime thriller is that you're seeing that violence, that stuff on the page, where here it's more like, oh, a dead body has been found. It could be anybody did it. Whereas opposed to usually you're seeing stuff from like from the killer's point of view, or you're seeing a lot of different things like that. So there was this agent I sent to, a really high profile agent. Like she represents a lot of big name authors. And more or less, I just submitted as like on like a whim. And one of her readers, her main assistant reader, had gotten back to me right away and said, "Oh, they wanted to read the whole thing. She loved it. She was sending it along with her highest recommendation." Ultimately, the agent really wasn't into the book, but they asked me, "Would you be okay? Like, would I be interested in working with them to do kind of like revise a little bit? Because they think that there's definitely a lot of potential here, but they think the book could be, with whatever else." And at the time, I didn't have anything else going on. I was like, "Sure, okay, Absolutely. This is interesting."
Yeah.
And so I was working with, she essentially works as like a copy editor for like the agency. So I was having the agent's assistant. We were like working on drafts. We were on calls, coming up with ideas and stuff. It was insane. And then at the end of it, she was basically like, "Okay, now let me send it around to some agents here at the agency and see if anybody's interested." Which in retrospect, I guess she should have checked first if there was any agents before we spent all this time, because in the end, we got to a place where she was like, "You know what? If you want to go and look elsewhere, if you want to search other agents, that's fine." Then I'm going with an agent, a completely different other agency. After this agency had spent all this time with me, like really helping build this. In fact, I thanked them in the acknowledgments for, I don't know if they would ever saw it or even knew, but like, if it wasn't for them, that book would not have become the book it did. But yeah, and I feel it now, especially with the Chateau, and I have, some other projects I've worked on. I feel a much better sense of separating my brands, the Avery Bishop and Robert Swartwell books, that, and in fact, there are even times where like I'll pitch an idea to my agent, and my agent will think like, "Oh, okay, yeah, this is more of an Avery Bishop book." And in my head, because usually I see much more of the book and the story than a couple sentences or lines that I give my agent, I'm like, "No, I think it's more of a Robert Swartwood for this, or this." But sometimes stuff kind of blurs the line. You're kind of on that line where it could go one way or another.
Sure.
Yeah. So that is the story of, or the Ballad of Avery Bishop.
Well, I think pen names are interesting because, like even the big guys have done it. Michael Crichton used John Lang, and you could just, if you look at his catalog, John Lang is more of the action adventure, and then Crichton is more of the science fiction, technology driven, kind of meshing that line between reality and science fiction. And he did that really well, but you can kind of see the difference between the two. And there's a lot of other authors we could talk about that do the same. I just think pen names are very interesting, and how you approach that. And hearing you kind of talk about it on a branding level, it makes a whole lot of sense of, you might have the idea you want to keep it over on one lane or the other.
Yeah. Have you ever read the book 5 Decembers?
I don't think so.
It won the Edgar Award. I think James Kessel. Do I have a copy here?
5 Decembers.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna write it down.
Here it is. It was Hard Case Crime published it.
Okay.
And it won the Edgar Award. And this author actually had published, like James Kessel Kessler is not his real name. He had published other novels under a different name. And I think I read somewhere or I heard on an interview that basically the publisher wanted to use the pen name. I think they sold it under his real name, but then the publisher had suggested the idea of using a pen name. Mostly what it comes down to is bookstores, because bookstores will also track records, and they'll see like, well, last time this, so-and-so's book came out, we didn't sell any copies. We had a lot of returns. And so they're not going to order as many copies this time around. Usually if it's a brand new name, they will say, "All right, well, let's give it a chance." Usually I guess, I don't know, maybe it's this weird psychological thing where readers are more likely to take a chance on a brand new author they've never heard of, as opposed to an author whose books might have been around for like a decade and they've seen their books, they've never really read the books. And, publishing is just the weirdest. I always say, just talking to someone the other day at an event, like it's literally the worst business in the world. Like, I don't know, like the only reason I think as writers we stay in it is because we love writing. We love telling stories, but the actual business of having to deal with just, when you really go down to the business aspect of like numbers and say, it's just, yeah, it's just an awful type thing. And I think it really like squelches just art.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, it's hard.
I'm doing,
It's
yeah, I
hard to
mean,
know like
I've
what
been
an
having,
agent wants. Like you're pitching to an agency and you're like, you got to figure out
yeah.
what they know right now, but it's not going to get published for 18 to 24 months. So how do you know what the
And sometimes
market's going to like then? So it's so weird.
that's the thing too about markets. They might be like, well, right now there's a lot in this market. Or if you come up with something completely original, they might be like, well, there's nothing to really compare this to. It's, yeah, it is. Again, it goes back to that whole idea. It almost feels like they're always like, everyone's always looking for a reason to say no. Actually, in a couple of days, I'm going to be doing a live stream with Meg Gardner, and I'm
Yeah,
reading
I
China
saw
Lake,
that.
her very first novel. And like, it's a, I mean, and it wasn't the Edgar, and I can understand why. It's an incredible book, but like her first couple books, just no U.S. publisher wanted to publish these. And I'm gonna have a conversation with her just about that whole thing because it's just so ridiculous. Like a lot of times, like really good books just do not get published for one reason or another. They just so like you might have a book that goes out, it just doesn't get published. And, no editors are interested,
Yep.
and it's not because it's a bad book. And I think that's why a lot of authors then find a lot of freedom in self-publishing because there's just so many books that just get rejected for one reason or another, not because they're bad books. And a lot of those books then, and a lot of those authors find great readerships because they're good books. They just, for whatever reason, did not have the right editor at the right time. Or maybe there was something similar where that editor was like, I can't do this. Or again, maybe it goes back to just sales records where just, oh, this
Yeah.
author just really has a poor sales track record. And even though this might be an amazing book that would, catch the right readers and become a huge hit, publishers just don't want to take a chance.
Yeah, I don't think people have as much runway as they used to now that I think publishing has become a little more corporate America. And, you know, there's big CEOs that are running these big publishing houses now, and it's more of a business. I think even a couple of years ago, it seems like the
Yeah.
big editors had a little more say, and they were taking a little more risk. Whereas now I've been hearing about stuff, especially in the military and spy thriller genre, where it's like, you know, you've got a couple of books maybe, and if you aren't knocking the doors down, and you have that demand, you're not going to get another contract, and you're going to have to come up with something else. And it's just happening to really good people.
Yeah. Publishers essentially want the first novel to be a hit. And if it's not, then you're, you know,
Yeah,
SOL.
yeah, it's
And that's
sad.
another thing too. I think like back in the day, editors, if they love the book, they could just acquire it.
Yeah, that was
Now
enough.
now it's you have to go. They have to take it to acquisitions where
Yeah,
there's the marketing department, and it's a whole process.
yeah.
And I don't know. Are you familiar with the author Paul Tremblay?
I feel
He's
like
a
I've heard
horror
that name.
author. Yeah, he M. Night Shyamalan turned one of his books into a movie, Knock at the Cabin. But his first two novels were crime novels, and then he's always at heart been a horror author, and then so he wrote this book called Head Full of Ghosts, and they shopped it around, and he said he told me that like even some editors really wanted it, but ultimately the marketing department, their acquisitions was like no because the sales on his first two books just didn't go, and he didn't want to utilize a pen name. And eventually there was an editor at William Morrow really pushed for that book. And now I don't know how many books it's been since, but I mean, he's a New York Times bestseller. He's considered one of like, the biggest horror authors in the world. And it's just, yeah. And again, it's one of those things where he could have just not had that one editor said yes. He might just be, still publishing small press. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. Tom Colgan, the guy behind Mark Greaney and the Clancy Estate and a lot of other big books, he told me at BoucherCon like 2 years ago that he has to take his ideas to the panels. And I'm like, you're Tom
Yeah.
Colgan. Like, you've crushed it for years as an editor. And he's like, I still have to take new ideas to a panel and basically sell it to the board or it won't get published. And I'm like, wow, wow. You would think
Yeah.
that they'd have even guys like him with a massive track record of picking them really, really well would have a little more grace when it comes to that. And nope, it's a
I feel
business
like
now.
some editors, I had heard about some editors kind of on his level who basically left publishing because of that, because it was just so frustrating
Yeah,
that they just could no longer really acquire the novels they felt that they loved, that they now had to go on this whole song and dance to try to get these books published. That it just got, there was just so much tension in between, between them and then the acquisitions and marketing and whatever else, that they had enough and just left.
Well, and agents know this. So what do agents do? They don't look at the book through an art kind of lens. They look at it through, well, do I like this and can I sell it? And then, like, because why would they want to sign a book that they know they can't sell? And if they're talking to editors and publishing houses and they know what the vibe is right now and you don't give them the vibe, then they're not going to commit. Even though your book could be a 5-star book, they could be totally in love with it. But if they can't sell it, it's no better than a paperweight. And it's like, wow.
I just had, I don't want to say who it was, but this author told me recently that he had been trying to get an agent, and he had self-published some titles, and he said more than one agent basically told him that he's too old, that like they didn't really, they felt he was too old to, I guess because publishers are always looking for like the best new young thing. They want like newer, younger authors. And I said, are you including your age when you're querying these ages? He's like, no, I guess they're just Googling him and they're seeing and they're deciding that. And I said, that's effed up. I don't know if I'm able to swear on this. I don't know if you moderate.
No.
If you monetize your YouTube or not, so I don't want to use your swears, but yeah, okay. Well, I was like, man, that's fucked up. Like, you insane? Like, that's crazy. And that's, yeah.
Wow. I mean, it just makes you go, it's insane the way publishing is now. And just talking to some friends that I know in the industry as well, just hearing some of the things that they're saying. And I'm like, I don't feel so bad about getting a rejection from an agent nowadays, just because it seems like nobody is exempt from getting that, because it's happening all the time.
And here's another thing, a little, I guess, I don't know if this is just me or my experience, but I've talked to other writers who have had it too. Just the actual submission process, once you've gone over that hurdle of finding an agent and then going to publishers, oftentimes, like, there are oftentimes where, and I think this is part of just editors are just so overworked now. They have so much going on that sometimes they just don't respond. Where like recently we had, fortunately we had an offer for a new Avery Bishop project. I haven't really signed a contract, so I can't really say who the publisher is, but then we had it out with other publishers. And so my agent had, given them, I think it was 2 weeks to basically say, if you're interested, let us know. And I think maybe like one or two, kind of gave us an official, like, thanks, no thanks. So I think maybe half a dozen we didn't even hear from. It was basically like, if they were interested, they would let us know. Well, we didn't hear from them, so I guess they're not interested. But it was just like not even the courtesy of saying, no, this isn't for us,
no
or
thanks,
we're gonna, or like we're gonna bow out at this time. And on top of that, it really feels that I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but it feels like that editors just don't really want to edit anymore. Like they want a book that comes in that is just perfect. Yeah. That is like publication ready. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, and it almost feels like sometimes in the past we've gotten like passes on certain things, and like the editor might be like, well, in the end, I wish there was, more this or this. And it's like, okay, give me a weekend. Like that is an easy fix. What are you talking about? And I guess like if they were really into the project, they would, of course they're going to do editing. But I feel like right now, like basically, again, it goes back to that, just any excuse to say no. Anything in there that sticks out and they're like, nope, this is not going to be a no. And whereas opposed to like I always go back to the Cormac McCarthy, where like his first couple books, the publisher was just publishing because I think the editor really liked his books. His sales were dismal. And I think at one point he wrote, I think, All the Pretty Horses, and then he tried to switch publishers, and that became a whole thing where they were like, was he going to be able to leave? And the publisher's like, what do we care if this guy leaves? Like his books have not sold or whatever else. Again, going back to what you said about, they want a hit, your very first book. And if not your first book, your second book better be a hit. And if not, then, a lot of friends that we have that we've taught, have they published a few books here and there, and then
looking for,
and then, and I always say it's always, and honestly, that's like digital publishing, self-publishing, I think is very, I don't know what's the right word for it, because like if you go to like a used bookstore, you will walk around a used bookstore and you will see all these authors who you probably have never even heard of or even thought about, maybe in a very long time. Maybe you read their stuff like a decade or 2 decades ago, but and they were publishing with Random House, they were publishing with Putnam, and then at some point they just stopped publishing. And there could be a reason for that. Could be the person's their health was bad, maybe whatever else. Like, or 9 times out of 10, it's just because the sales weren't there, and they just did not have another avenue. Whereas opposed to now, with at least self-publishing, you can continue. I mean, I always go back to Brett Battles. He had, I think it was Delacorte had published his first couple books, and then just they basically ended up dropping him. The guy's a machine. He just keeps writing, and he just he keeps the series, the Jonathan Quinn series, going, and the readership keeps building. That then the books from his first, from the first couple of books that were with the publisher, just keep selling because he keeps the series going. A lot of authors just don't want to do that. They just kind of are like, okay, I guess it's not going to happen, and then they just go and they do something else. So it really goes back to, I think, just the love and the passion. If you have the love and the passion to tell stories, you're gonna keep doing it no matter how you do it. If it's through a publisher or you do independent or self-publish or whatever else.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Let's do some fun stuff here for a second. Let's do some fun this or that kind of thing.
Fun
So just
stuff.
right off the top of your head, coffee or tea?
Neither.
Neither. Okay.
Yeah, I know it's not good for me, but usually it's always sugar-free Red Bull. I don't drink coffee or tea.
Okay,
honestly, I guess I could always try to go back to. Do you have something to recommend in terms of coffee? I know you're a big coffee guy.
I really like to kind of search around for those small roasters. There's one in Houston that's attached to a bookstore, and I can't think of the name off the top of my head. But they had some really cool stuff, and I supported them, and I bought some bags from them because they're attached to a bookstore, and the roasting is kind of like their second little line of revenue, and they were pretty cool. So I like to get those small roasters who kind of have that passion for roasting and aren't trying to crank out those massive things. Like, I like Black Rifle, but there's better coffees out there.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay. Pizza or a burger?
Oh man, that's tough. Mm-hmm. Mostly because I probably end up having pizza more often, but a good burger, it's hard to not to like turn up a really good burger. There's a place near us that does these really great smash burgers, and so it's I mean, I might have to go burger on that one. Cheeseburger,
okay.
Definitely.
Okay. Laptop or desktop?
I'm laughing because what I've started utilizing for my first drafts is I'll have like my larger iPad and I'll have the Magic Keyboard.
Okay.
And I use that on Google Docs for my first draft.
Gotcha.
So I only ever use my laptop actually for when I do like these like live streams because it's away. But so I'm gonna say desktop just because I do most of the work on desktop.
Okay. Waffles or pancakes?
Oh, man, Jeff, you're killing me here. Because it really depends. Like, some like are we talking like Belgian waffles or like Eggo waffles? You know what I mean?
Like Belgian, yeah, or like a real waffle.
Ooh, yeah. I'm gonna have to say Belgian waffle because I feel like even though pancakes can be really great, a really good Belgian waffle, that's hard to come by.
Yep. Marvel or DC?
I don't know. Since James Gunn took over DC, I think I feel like DC is turning around. I really like the new Superman movie. I always felt, because I know a friend of mine was like, he wasn't sure about the new Superman, and I'm like, in James Gunn I trust. And it's like, I don't know if you've like what he did with like the Guardians movies and even his Suicide Squad. Like, I don't know, he just has this certain touch where he just really makes you kind of get in your feels sometimes.
Yeah.
Right now, though, if I had to watch one forever, at least in terms of the TV and film, I would have to go with Marvel. There's more there. I feel like more I enjoy, more the characters.
John Wick or John McClane?
I feel like that's not. I feel
It's
like,
almost
I
not
mean,
fair,
again,
right?
what are we talking about here? It's like completely different stuff. um, I don't know, but hey, I just picked this up. Did you ever read this? I picked this up the other day. The book that Die Hard was based
Oh,
on.
yes, yes, yes. That's very
And the
cool.
main character, what is the main character there? His name's not John McClane, I don't think. But man, that I mean, yeah. I'm gonna have to go with oh man. Just because the kid in me, I'm at to say John McClane.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I like John Wick and great movies, but yeah, John McClane seems a little more old
Although I
school
guess the
down to home.
question is, at John McClane until when? Because some of the movies,
Yeah,
like I don't know, I think I saw like the fifth movie, I think like once. I had no interest in ever watching it again.
yeah,
The one with Timothy Oliphant.
it was good.
It's just it's so over the top, but I love it. I
Yeah,
don't know
oh yeah,
why.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
but it's not like a traditional. Well, quite honestly, I don't know how much time we have, but like the Die Hard movies, they're always like based on other scripts. Like you know what I mean? Like they're never really just die. You know, no one sat down and said, "I'm going to create this character, John McClane. I'm going to write about." They're always somebody else's script. Like I think probably the best Die Hard movie besides the first one is With a Vengeance, the third movie, and that was based on a guy's spec script. I think it was called just Simon Says. And then they realized, oh, you know, maybe we can make this more into a Die Hard type of thing. And then they like rewrote it and brought in, and so it's just one of those weird things that, like, you know, like for us as an audience, it's like, oh, this is a Die Hard movie, but it was never meant to be a Die Hard movie.
Yeah.
Even I think that what was the one Jack Ryan movie that Chris Pine starred in? Shadow something, Shadow Recruit.
Shadow Recruit. Yeah, yeah.
I think I remember reading somewhere that had been like a spec script, like that was never meant to be a Jack Ryan thing.
Oh, I can
And
see
they
that.
realized like, oh, we can kind of, you know, play with some things here and really make it and try to fit it in as like, I think it was like a more of a prequel, you know, a Jack Ryan prequel. So yeah, that stuff happens all the time. But yeah, no, Die Hard movies, I'd love to go back and, you know, rewatch them all, except the fifth one. I always that one's just really bad.
The last one's not that good. All right, Schwarzenegger or Stallone?
Schwarzenegger.
Okay, yeah. Although I do like Stallone and Judge Dredd.
Yeah, but you know, I feel like, but did you see the more recent one with Carl Urban?
I did. I like that one too.
That one is, I mean, the one that Stallone did was very like 90s. That was like, it almost reminds me too much of Demolition Man.
Oh yeah, yeah. You
know, it was just, there was like
over
that
the
type
top,
of
flashy, trying to be too futuristic. Yeah.
Do you ever, I forget what the channel is, but do you ever watch, I don't know if it was like Joe Blow or something, where they'll do like the history of these movies. And I've been watching a lot of those recently. Like I watched recently ones about like Face Off and Broken Arrow and The Rock.
Yes.
And they did one about Judge Dredd where they really kind of went off of like, they kind of took the seat of what like in the character of the comics, what Judge Dredd is supposed to be, but really kind of got changed around because oftentimes like people like Stallone or Schwarzenegger will come in and they'll like want to kind of go in different directions. Yeah. Whereas opposed to, I feel like the one that Alex Garland wrote and some say even kind of directed with Carl Urban was much more true to that character.
Yeah.
But I don't know, between the two, like, you know, I mean, nothing beats like True Lies.
Oh my God.
You know, like nothing beats like, you know, T2. I mean, you know.
Golly, yeah. True Lies I watched that probably 1,000,000 times when it first came out.
Did you watch it? So when was the last time you watched True Lies?
Man, probably
because I watched it a couple of years ago. And do you remember? A year or two ago? It is hilarious when at the very beginning of the movie when he's at the party and he's talking to somebody and it says in Arabic, but then like the subtitle says like the whatever he's saying, and then in, like I think it was in parentheses below it, perfect Arabic, basically saying like, you know, how smooth or how great of a spy he is. It's like perfect Arabic.
I love watching we put the subtitles on everything now just because for the comic relief, because it'll say like mild laughing or it'll say something, the way it describes things sometimes is just it's comical in itself just to watch the subtitles for just for that reason.
Yeah.
All right, here's a big kind of a quiz question. If you could only take 3 albums with you to a remote island for an entire year, what would they be?
man, the problem is I don't really listen to. I feel like I don't really listen to music as much as I used to, like growing up. And
Okay.
I feel when growing up, God, I feel so old. But you know, and it's so weird because I don't know about you. I mean, I know there's still physical media, but everything now is just on my phone. Like I'll use like the Apple Music app
Yeah.
to like listen to, mostly just kind of like picking and choosing certain songs. You create your playlist. So to albums though, you know what? I really just, I could listen to it all the time. Do you remember the Linkin Park Jay-Z mashup?
Yeah.
I'd have to pick that one because
It was
that one I
good.
could just listen to again and again.
It was fun.
It was so fun. It was so much at the time. I was like, are they going to do this with any other bands? This is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But they never really did. Like that was it. So I'm going to do that one just because it's so unique. Man, just because I can't think of anything else. The Rock soundtrack, because
Okay.
that music is amazing. I
Yep.
think Hans Zimmer, of course, anything by Hans Zimmer, which apparently
Yeah.
he's not going on tour, because initially I thought he was going on tour, but apparently these people are going on tour, this symphony,
I
playing
saw
all these
that.
Hans Zimmer
I
stuff.
saw
And
that.
initially, because I saw this YouTube video where they were doing, I think, one of the songs from Interstellar, where he's like docking, you know, when the ship's out of control. And I found out like they're on tour. They're going to be in Philadelphia, and like I said, someone to my wife, and she's like, "Why would we want to do that?" I'm like, "Come
It's
on!"
Hans Zimmer.
But he's not going to be there.
Ah,
You know what I mean? Like he's not actually going to be in attendance, kind of conducting or whatever he would do, and that kind of felt like you're just seeing, you know, a tribute band or like a tribute symphony type thing, even
yeah.
though it was selected by him. Oh man, what's another album? I just can't. Let's go with Alice in Chains Unplugged,
Good
MTV
pick.
Unplugged.
Good pick. Good pick. All
Yeah.
right. Last question. If you could start a rumor about yourself, what would it be?
Um, that I wasn't responsible for that one thing everyone thinks I did.
Okay. Fair.
That's my cop out because I have nothing. I have nothing good there.
All right. Before I let you go, let's talk about what's next. What projects do you have working on? What does 2026 look like for you? Do you have anything kind of in the works?
Yeah, so I haven't signed the contract yet, so I can't talk too much about it. I'm assuming that once I do, there will be some type of announcement. I know the publisher oftentimes tries to do that, but there will be some new Avery Bishop stuff coming out. I am working on currently, like probably like halfway through the first draft of a new Robert Swartwood novel, and it is a mess. I will say that it's kind of a strategic mess because like first drafts obviously are never perfect,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm kind of struggling through it. It's just I know that I kind of know what I want to do, but it's one of those things where you know what you want to do. It's just really trying to force yourself. It's not like I'm forcing the characters, the storyline a certain way. It's just there's a lot there, and I think part of me kind of feels like once I do finish that first draft, it's going to be so much work then going
Yeah.
back in, because like I know I want to do kind of play around with time, and that's a lot of things like the Avery Bishop books do, where we're jumping around. You know, you have like that like now then or now before, you know, a lot of that flashback dual timeline. Where I had promised myself years and years and years ago, I was like, I'm never going to write a book like that, because again, I felt like there was like more of a trend or trendy. But honestly, I have a lot of fun with that. You know, you can really kind of really mess with a reader or listener's head, you know, kind of jumping around in time, seeing, you know, what's real, what's not real. But so there's definitely going to be new work for me in terms of Robert Swartwood. As of right now, I don't know what would coming out unless maybe I have extra time, and you know, I've been wanting to get back into my Holly Lynn series or something. But there will be some new works, but
Okay.
I can't talk too much about it at this time.
Gotcha. Well, folks, stay on social media. Go follow Robert, and he has an Avery Bishop page on Instagram. So go follow both of those so you get all the new announcements, and go check out the Chateau. It's a great audiobook. I'm loving it so far. If you think the cover's great, just wait till you listen to the narrator. She absolutely crushes it. Robert, it was great having you on. Congratulations on the Avery Bishop audiobook. We'll go offline and we'll talk here for a few minutes, but thanks for coming, man.
No, thanks, Jeff.